Hey guys, welcome back to Russian Libertas Corpus YouTube channel where we, Alexei Postnikov and Gala Bagatova, are talking about Russian issues in general. Russian politics in general. It's pretty general, yeah. Russian politics, Russian society, the social dynamics and sometimes political strategies, because it's kind of related to our topic for today. And also we're answering your questions, so please, if you have any questions about what we're going to talk about in this video, or any questions you have, just ask them in the comments. I promise we're going to release more answering your question videos soon, so please do that. But today we have I would say it's a very loud topic, at least in Russia. And this is the new legislation that creates, I would say, like the mobilization in resource for tomorrow.
I would say it's a digitalization of mobilization. So instead of sending the paper, I wouldn't say invitation, the call to the battlefield, they now can send it electronically, and you cannot even disguise it. You cannot.
So a little bit of a background, because I'm a Army Dodger with 6 years experience, because I have a legitimate reason not to go in the army and serve, because Russia still have drafted army, regular army, not professional, not fully professional, and all men are obligated to go and serve now for 1 year in the army after they turn 18 till the age of 27, although they moved this frame to up to 30 years recently. But I was dodging the army after I finished university and until I turned 27. And it was pretty easy. You're just kind of ignoring. You're just ignoring army people, because if you didn't sign for the subpoena you got issued or invitation to the army office, if you personally didn't sign the papers that you got served this subpoena, yeah, you're good. So like the only thing you needed to do is to avoid signing the documents, which was not that hard to do. So I successfully made it without a lot of effort. But now this new legislation digitalizing the process. So instead of a real person going to your home and giving you a piece of paper that says like you need to go to the army office, they send you an electronic notification, electronic subpoena on your government account, which is called Gosuslugi, which is basically your state account. For most of people in Russia who has internet or using internet, they do have those accounts. You can use them for paying fines, paying for utilities, but a lot of stuff. But now those accounts are going to be used for drafting and mobilizing people. And not only that, so now basically if you got this subpoena into your account, you got served. There is no way to avoid it, even if you delete your account, which is a little bit counterintuitive, but it's Russia, so a lot of things are counterintuitive, but they still exist. So now automatically they send you, you get served. That's it, according to this new legislation. And more of that, if you not answer to this subpoena and if you not go to the army office within 7 days after getting the notification that you got served, automatically you will be banned from leaving the country. You won't have right to drive your car. Your driver license will be suspended, I guess. You cannot do any deals with property, real estate.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot open business, like small business account, or not even account, just, you cannot do that. I think that
The list is a little longer, but the overall idea that they're deprived from their human rights in many ways.
So basically, it's like creating legitimately second-class citizens.
Right.
If they not gonna answer to this army call, and everybody's in Russia. Well, everybody is in Russian informational space talking about it. And of course, this is a big news all over the world because directly it might influence the war. Because if Russia will be able to just drag more people into the front line, of course it will affect the situation. But the interesting thing about this completely repressional and pretty terrifying legislation that it didn't start working yet, and me personally, I think it might not start work at all if something like really bad will happen bad for Russia will happen on the front line in Ukraine. So now we're gonna just bear with us. It might be a little bit kind of weird and difficult to understand if you're not from Russia, because if you don't have like this whole idea how Russian system in generally works. But that's why we're here. So, okay. So my first question. So we have first wave of mobilization last September.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people left the country. Not a lot more people just avoided getting mobilized and getting the subpoenas.
Mm-hmm.
It was Putin's rating fell down significantly.
Mm-hmm.
So and now they have basically this big net, and they can just throw it, and like they can send out just like by one click they can send out, let's say, 20 million subpoenas. My question to you, if we consider them being rational, and it's in a lot of ways they're still rational, they're making rational decisions, would they do that, and what would be consequences?
Well, you rightfully mentioned that as soon as they went through the first wave of mobilization, a lot of people left the country, right? And interestingly enough, the country was not closed. So it was an invitation to leave to whoever who was, disobedient enough or aware enough or had enough opportunities to do so right away. So that was an invitation to just run away. The second option was to avoid. So they let this space for the people who were unwilling to, were not loyal enough to go to the army, because they understood that people who are loyal with the guns are not the best, elements of the society. So basically, they provided the leeway for people who were unwilling to participate in this, while those who are obedient enough or brainwashed enough could participate in this endeavor. What's happening now? They basically don't leave the chance for people who were referred to this first category, but apparently they were not able to leave the country, and they are not able to do it now anymore.
Yeah.
So this is an extremely risky situation. I doubt that they would ever do sell out the subpoenas out to the entire available units that they have right now, because it's a huge risk, and they were reluctant to do this so far for a reason.
Yeah.
My idea is that they are probably going to hold this opportunity just in case something extremely catastrophic is happening, and there will be the need for them to do so, and an obvious threat to their lives as well. So they just have no choice either way. But before that, I don't think that this is in any interest of this regime, which is preoccupied on the first place with its own survival at the power. So I don't think that they will use it once.
Yeah. And also a little bit of background from last year. Mobilization was proclaimed on September 21st. And what happened 3-4 weeks before that? It was major Ukrainian counteroffensive in Kharkiv Oblast, and actually Ukrainian army completely liberated Kharkiv Oblast from Russian troops. And it was swift, fast, and Russian army basically just fled. So at the time, that might be considered as a catastrophic event, because after this, they think, oh, now they're gonna punch those, like holes in our defenses on all the front lines. So we need a lot of people right away. We need just like send more meat into the, this meat grinder just to hold off the already occupied territories. So let's say this is like a big club that Putin has now, but he's not swinging it yet at all. But he has this opportunity. Meanwhile, what's interesting in Russian propaganda for Russians that directed inside Russia, Russian federal TV channels, they almost don't talk about this new legislation. Well, obviously, you might think, well, because it's, scary, terrible, it's not going to be popular. Yeah, but we have examples in the past when it's not the first unpopular legislation, as you might guess. But each time, the extremely unpopular legislation were actually pushed into people with slightly changing the narrative, like shifting focus. It's for example, they could turn this whole electronical, digital drafting into, it's really, it's really cool. Now you can just go without going to your army office. You can just have it on tip of your fingers in your phone. Very progressive, that kind of bullshit. They might do a big campaign about it to try to normalize this legislation among Russian public. They are not doing it, and when we're recording this video, it's a little bit more than 2 weeks since this legislation got passed. It's not happening on Russian TV channels, so it seems like they're trying not to let people know what might happen. So again, it's another argument in the, that they're not going to do it, because if they're going to do it right away, it's going to be out of nowhere, and shock is not a very good...
right, it's inconsistent
yes.
and inefficient.
Meanwhile, there is a very small part textual-wise in this legislation that not discussed that much. Only some of the independent Russian media pointed out. But I think it's extremely important, and maybe right now, it's the actual horrible thing that this legislation brought to the, political table. Sorry for that metaphor, it sounds a little bit stupid. But inside this legislation, there is a small clause that says that now drafted soldiers, and we're talking about 18 to 30 years old young men, some of them just right after high school, can actually sign the contract by which shifting from regular army to professional army, starting day one of their service. What's the trick? Before that, according to Russian laws, drafted soldiers, so just people who recently were just, school students, university, college students, or just young men, could not be sent to the front line or even in the area of military army engagement, because that's against the law. And in some ways, like Russian Federation still kind of worked by some laws. It's a little bit weird. But anyway, we did not have a lot of cases of drafted young men being sent to frontline. But as soon as they signed the professional contract, that's it. Now they can send them. And before that, according to Russian law, people could sign the contract only 6 months after they being drafted. So at least they all have like this gap of 6 months with more or less guaranteed not being sent to the front line. Now this is gone, and now the new drafting campaign, spring campaign, started. So basically, with this law, what do we have? Let's say someone will graduate from school, let's say in early June, will go to the army if they 18 years old, and I don't know, 5 days after they are on the front line, dying or killing, and both are horrible things. With to happen with a yesterday school student. But according to this law, this might happen now. And I think that's why I think it's important. And to kind of back it up, we're gonna shift our video into reviewing parts. By the way, if you haven't seen us reviewing Russian propaganda commercials, check out them. It's cringy, sad, terrible, sometimes funny. So let's check out this video that I think targeted specifically for yesterday's school students.
Азбука СВО. Простые советы, которые помогут вернуться домой целым и невредимым. Сегодня ты узнаешь, как правильно действовать при огневом контакте. Тренируйся выстрелить первым. Будь всегда начеку. Это в тире мишень не уворачивается и не открывает ответный огонь. В бою у тебя будет только 1 секунда, чтобы поразить противника. За это время лучше сделать 2 выстрела, чем прицеливаться 1 раз. Через секунду прячься в укрытие. Если ты не Дэдпул, не нужно укрываться за легковой машиной. Она простреливается на вылет. Частично защищает только передняя часть, где расположен двигатель. Упражняйся в стрельбе из-за угла не только с упором в правое, но и в левое плечо. Противник знает, как тебе удобнее, и попытается обойти укрытие против часовой стрелки. Всегда будь готов сменить позицию. Скорость в бою зачастую важнее меткости. А первым умирает тот, кто медленно бегает.
If you were shocked, that's normal. I was shocked too, because what we see here is basically kind of funny cartoon, almost like Tom and Jerry style cartoon, but it's about Russian and Ukrainian soldiers trying to kill each other. It's like, hey buddy, what you should do to kill a man and not being killed. Well, okay, maybe we shouldn't just comment on the substance of it, because it's
I think this particularly this kind of targeted videos are the most explicit expression of totalitarianism of this regime. Not authoritarian, but totalitarian. Why? Because it targets the kids. And the recruiters now are even visiting high schools to recruit the high school pupils, the current pupils, with of course, with the perspective that they graduate soon and they should be recruited. But this is particularly targeting kids and targeting educational institutions that are not of a high education, that are people that are not yet mature, is one of the most horrible repercussions of totalitarianization of Putin's regime.
And to kind of go back to what we were talking before, so now we have the situation when a young man, 18, 19 years old teenager, has an ability and has a right to sign the professional army contract starting day one of his service. And there are a lot of known cases in Russian independent media. They were talking about it, how people got forced to sign those contracts by or purely peer pressure. And like, just remember yourself when you were 18 19 or 20 years old. Was it hard? Let's say some friends come to you and it's like, hey, let's go and like get drunk. And you're like, I don't feel like drinking. You're like, wait, why not? Like, was it hard to push you to do something that you were not going to do in the first place just by peer pressure?
Oh yeah.
No, I
Oh
mean,
yeah. That's the most vulnerable layer of population that
yeah,
conscious wise. That's why it's so cruel.
yeah. And now with that, just imagine them, maybe thinking about signing the contract, and then they have these funny cartoons. That's cartoonization of war. It's, I mean, yeah, I'm still kind of shocked. I don't know what to say about
Of
it more.
course.
Yeah, because and that's a thing. Again, they targeting young people to normalize war for them, and it has kind of nothing to do with digitalization again, because their goal is to have more people who are willingly
Right. So that's the
participating.
interesting dynamic here, that we don't have a lot of noise about the actual repercussions of this legislation and the existence of thereof at all. But we see a lot of the narrative around selling it to the publicity,
Yeah.
which explains the fear of resistance, because now the target is not necessarily the loyal population who can willingly go to the
Yeah.
forepost and just claim their presence, right? So now, because this is a more risky situation when you are approaching a less susceptible people, now they sell these cartoonish scenarios to avoid raising any reaction among the population. And I guess that will be the focus until this hits the fan.
Yeah. And that's on one hand targeting younger audience. On the other hand, we had, I would say, pretty significant shift in advertisement for adult or middle-aged audience. So now we're gonna go and watch another commercial, pretty fresh commercial for signing up for the war. It's still horrible. But at least with this one, I can kind of, think more straight, I guess. So the narrative before, around being a man, let's talk about pre-war times. What's interesting about this video, all three guys who are in this video would be considered, man. And they talking about, in English, there is not so much difference between, like man as a neutral, like a sex description. Like, I'm a man. That's it. And like, man. It's more about intonation, like, being a man.
That's the gender.
Gender.
Gender toxicity, yeah.
Yeah. So before, like pre-war and even into the war, being a guard in the grocery store is like a security guard, or doing weights in the gym, even being a taxist. We have this whole narrative about Russian taxes is like middle-aged guy who knows everything about politics, and he will give you all the conspiracy theories and all the bullshit. It's like, it's like a man, like being a man. Like they were. That's example of like average, stupid, toxic masculinity types.
Right.
Not necessarily even toxic, just man. They were completely legit. And before that, with previous commercials, they were also targeting those people because financially they're not very successful, but at least they had their identity as like being like a real man.
Right.
And they were like, well, hey, real man, like, do you want to make some money? Go to the war. Which was kind of a practical talk, like they were offering them a deal, but nobody was questioning the masculinity of, doing weights in the gym,
Right.
because it was unquestionable. In this
Yeah.
video, yeah.
You're completely right. And interestingly enough, it is very common when during the war or before the war, the gender heteronormativity, it raises in the level. So men immediately have to be more masculine and women immediately have to be more feminine. It's the standard. Almost in any traditional society, it's the way the war happening. It's the playing with the instincts. Otherwise, you have nothing to die for. So, but here, it's very interesting how they manipulated the civil understanding of masculinity and devaluing the civility of masculine, norms.
Yeah.
They now devaluing, degrading it to the more feminine, image of it. They now sell not the money to these people. They sell their honor, their masculinity, probably the most precious they have in their life, their identity as a man in traditional society. That's, based on shame, on fear, on, thriving and surviving instincts. So they are targeting gender heteronormative men, or not men, are people who belong to this heteronormative paradigm, to devalue and degrade their civility to the point of demasculinizing them.
Yeah, and also what's interesting, because before we had, we have the videos built on family relationship,
right?
Mostly family relationship and like depth, but depth
and
is
women,
not that
a lot of
interesting.
women were in the dynamic. So it's always what I'm telling you, that gender play is extremely important during the war.
Yeah.
When we think that war is about men, it is not the case. It's always about instincts, because there are not many things in life that you would like to give your life for.
Right. And like before, again, it actually was every time it was about women, whether it's not every time, but like daughter, wife, or just the approval of some random women on the street.
Of course.
But they were selling this idea, this is how, so if you show the men you already are, if you show it on the front line, then women around you will be like, yes.
Right. Women,
so you will. That's your payment.
That's the currency. Yeah. Women are wartime currency.
Yeah, but in this commercial, there is nothing about women at all.
Right. It's
so, like,
demasculinizing.
Yes, because like, we're not talking that you're gonna be, but you're gonna get some, attention or approval from women.
They demasculize just civil professional positions that are probably the most masculine that you can take an average around population. So they raise the bar for what is masculine right now, and militarize masculinity. This is the standard procedure, but it's very interesting how every time as the epoch changes, what kind of means people use, or political elites use, to militarize the masculinity, just the essence of being a man, and how they use women as a currency, but not in this particular video.
But I think they kind of went hardcore on men in this, campaigns, propaganda campaigns, because again, let's go back to the very beginning of our today's video, that they really don't want to use this big club that they have to swing it, because they don't want to risk disapproval and maybe, who knows, even riots, because who could imagine what 20 million people got trapped in the country without a lot of rights could do. Well, a lot of men in the age when they can, physically able to do some stuff.
Yes, so it's very interesting how, like, if we say as an axiom that whenever you have to take violent measures, it is immediately the sign of losing power. So they, knowing that this act of conscripting people digitally could cause a great deal of resistance and loud resistance, they do everything to sell it as peacefully and as abundantly as possible, to not risk to take the action, that would cause a great deal of turmoil.
Yeah, and also I guess the overall point of that, like general point of how to better understand what are they doing, those people, in Russian government, Russian parliament. This is a really good example because we have this big, loud news about digital conscription, basically digital draft, which in fact might not happen, still might happen, but it wasn't the main point for right now. And right now there are different processes going on. And I think it's the same case with a lot of, not only legislation, a lot of tactics Russian government
Excuse me.
Russian government uses on, its own people, and in a way in Ukraine as well. It's a little bit like you cannot say what's the top, what's the bottom. Sometimes something big and scary is big and scary, but not why you think it is. Doesn't make any sense.
It's definitely so. So they're selling you things that are horrible, but how can they sell it to you if they don't draw it as something honorable or fun? So what do you think about this legislation? What are the consequences or chances that it can be used at a large scale? Or how do you find the videos that you seen that Alex introduced to you? And what do you think about the gender play that they're implying? I'm really curious to learn your opinion and have a conversation about it. What do you think about it?
Yeah. And again, if you have any other questions about Russia, don't hesitate, ask them in the comments. And at some point, I promise you, we will answer them all. So that's it for today. Like the video, share it with your friends who are curious about what's going on in Russia. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. With that, till next time, bye.